I will take the time to introduce our next panel. We are going to be talking about developing innovative financial instruments to empower early-stage equity markets in an era of worldwide digital transformation. Once again, it's a new world, and we are seeing the changes coming. I am hoping that my team is going to be doing a little bit of work up here with the chairs. No? Or maybe not. All right, well, I'm going to introduce our speakers because we are going to keep this train rolling regardless. We are going to bring back to the stage Israel Pons. He did a great job in the last panel as a participant, but we are going to be asking him to come on up here and moderate the next session. So he's got a big workload today. Are you up for it, Israel? Si, senor. Excellent. All right, my NAFTA buddy. Okay, excellent. While they're doing this work, we are also going to welcome Dr. Hashim Hussain. He is the head of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization for Investment and Technology Promotion Office, also known as UNIDO-IPTOPO. Why don't you come on up here and join us while we're getting a little physical transformation underway. From my other part of the world, where I've been hailing from for 24 years, that is Asia, we welcome Professor Inderjeet Singh, the president of the World Entrepreneurship Forum. Now, when I say he's from my part of the world, I mean we're neighbors, but also rivals, the great Hong Kong-Singapore rivalry, but I'll be nice to him today. So please, thank you for joining us, Professor Singh. We'd also like to welcome Itai Manier, the world president of the Junior Chamber International. Fantastic. They've got a massive chapter where I live, and so we're glad to have Itai Manier coming to join us on stage today. He's making his way up. Thank you very much. As well, Juan Torrance, who is the president of the Free and Special Economic Zones Federation, FEMOZA. Thank you very much for joining us today, Senor Torrance. As well, we are just packing the stage for this session. If we can welcome Marie-Christine Ogli, the world president of the World Association of Women Entrepreneurs. Is Marie-Christine? I'm looking out into the bright lights. She is at the airport. Okay, good. We'll maybe drop her in from the rooftops. We'll see. As well, if he's in the room, we'd like to welcome Ziad Alexandra Hayek, president of the World Association of PPP Units and Professionals. There you go. You bear the name of my all-time favorite economist. Fantastic. Are you related?
Not really.
Not really.
I wish I were.
Selma Hayek?
Yes.
Also, I'm a fan. All right. Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are transforming the stage. I think perhaps we've got Pons right here. We have Hayek down this end. Keep an eye out for your name as it comes up. Don't forget tonight, the agenda is going to run to about 10 after 6, assuming we're on time, and I think we should be. And then tonight, we will be having down here the gala dinner and the World Entrepreneurs Awards Night. So that's going to be very exciting, and we will see you here for that. Israel, I think you can have a seat, given that you're all prepared. I think the rest of you, gentlemen, it's going to be a little bit of lucky draw. There we go. Manier is next up. Fantastic. So, Mr. Torrance and Inderjeet, you'll have to wait and see where your spot is, but we'll get them going. Perhaps while they're doing that, Israel, you can do the setup for your panel. Are you ready to go?
I'm happy.
He was born ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, your panel. Thank you.
1, 2. Yeah, gracias. Great. We won't be rude and we'll wait for our guests to take their seats. I know the logistics are quite difficult, so thank you very much, guys. And whilst you are ready, we might need some water for our guests. I will ask each one of my guests to introduce themselves and to actually I will ask you to make it sound really sexy and entertaining, because remember, we are the second panel after lunch, and lunch was quite heavy. It was delicious, but it was quite heavy. So we'll ask you to keep my audience awake. So you be welcome to introduce yourselves. You can dance, you can take your clothes off, you can do whatever you like to make sure that we make this panel interesting enough. Yes, and we will be talking about innovative financial instruments, and disruptive, I will say it also is. And I like to have sufficient time, if possible, if we get told how long we have left, and leave about 10 minutes at the end if we have any questions from the audience directly to yourselves, because maybe my questions are not as interesting as the audience could give. If you're ready to start, then we will go ahead. Mr. Hayek, I would like you to introduce yourself, first of all. Please go ahead. And your organization, of course.
Okay, thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Ziad Alexandre Hayek. I was born in Lebanon. I've studied in Mexico and the US. I'm by background an investment banker. I've worked in New York and London for Citibank, Bear Stearns, Salomon Brothers, Indosuez. And in 2006, I decided to go work for the Prime Minister in Lebanon, where I spent 13 years as head Secretary General of the Council on Privatization and Public-Private Partnership. I resigned last year in March to run for the presidency of the World Bank, which I didn't get, but I got a dog. I spend a lot of time with my dog now. I continue my other activities. I'm Vice Chair of the United Nations Working Party on PPP. I'm President of the World Association of PPP Units and Professionals. And I have my own advisory business advising governments on public-private partnership. I'm delighted to be here. I spend a lot of time in Turkey on a regular basis. I'm here every summer because I'm an avid sailor, and Turkey has some of the best sailing in the world. And if you want an interesting story, I've been rescued by a Turkish submarine one time. And if anybody's interested in how you get rescued by a submarine, I'll tell you later. The World Association of PPP Units and Professionals is an entity that looks out for the interests of professionals in that field. So the main objective is to help people find jobs, to help consultants find contracts, to help PPP units find investors, to help investors find projects. So we are a networking organization that connect all the people involved in PPP. And the second thing we do is we try to spread the word and create awareness around the world about what are the international best practices in PPP, because it's a concept that has become very popular and popularized around the world. Everybody wants to do PPP, but it's very easy to mistake it and not understand exactly what it is and do it wrong. And every time you do it wrong, you have a failed project. So we spread awareness about the best ways to do PPP, especially what we call people-first PPP. So, which means that when you do a project, you're usually looking at value for money. But now we're saying, beside value for money, you have to look at value for people. And that's a whole conversation to be had some other time. I will just end by saying that normally PPP is for major projects, large infrastructure projects. So I'm a bit out of place here, but I want to tell you that we are trying to transform the PPP concept from being simply for financing infrastructure by the private sector to their, being a true partnership where the government at times comes in and works with the private sector to encourage SME participation. And I will yield to that.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Hassim Hussein.
Yeah, thank you. Well, of course, I'm delighted to be here. I'm a Bahraini citizen, but originally I'm a Nubian. I come from north of Sudan and south of Egypt. So as you know, Nubian is one of the oldest civilizations in history. It dates back to more than 7,000 years. It is before the Pharaoh civilization. And my grandmother from my mother is from Turkey, so I have a good blend. Well, I did my master's degree in law of the sea in France, Université de Nantes. Then I started my PhD in international law. Then I was being sent to University of Maryland in the US. at the Center for International Development and Conflict Management. It was an exchange program between French universities and American universities. But then I was doing research on conflict management for more than 3 years. Then I've been granted a doctoral research diploma from the University of Maryland, and then I came back to France and I did my other PhD. Then immediately I started to work with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, where I'm heading the UNIDO Investment and Technology Promotion Office in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and I'm also heading the only UN Center for Entrepreneurship and Investment. It's called the International Center for Entrepreneurship and Investment. I'm the chief executive of the World Entrepreneurs Investment Forum. It is the only forum under the UN umbrella for entrepreneurs. We organize this forum every 2 years. We started in 2015, 2017, 2019. I'm a board member of the World Business Angel Forum from day one over the last 5 years. I've been working with BIBERS, to enhance the entrepreneurial ecosystem worldwide. Part of our main activities to support entrepreneurs, we have developed several mechanisms and several models. We work in 52 countries out of Bahrain. We work from Uruguay in Latin America to Turkey here. In Turkey, we have a big program with GOSCEP. Today, the ex-deputy prime minister was talking about GOSCEP and talking about incubators. My organization, UNIDO, have started the first incubator in Turkey in 1991 at the Methodist University in Ankara, and then it has been evolved in one of the biggest science and technology parks in Turkey. Today, in Turkey, there are more than 70 science and technology parks. This accumulation of wealth and expertise have allowed us to provide this support for startup and growth of SMEs worldwide. We work in India, we work in China, we work in south of Italy, we work in all countries in the Arab region and big number of countries in sub-Saharan Africa. One of the things that you need to have opened this office in Bahrain in 1996 because Bahrain is the financial hub for the Arab region. Bahrain has more than 340 financial institutions, daily transaction between 25 to $30 billion. So it was very attractive to the organization that we opened this office and how we can work on what we call financial inclusion for startup and growth. Over the years, we have millions of entrepreneurs worldwide where we have been working with them with different mechanisms, with different partners, from micro to small to medium large. Our focus mainly is in sub-Saharan Africa, and of course the Arab region where they're very close to our setups. Part of our program with WebF is financial inclusion because we wanted to ensure that it's not only, of course I will talk later on, it's not only business angel, but all other means of financial institutions is required for startup and growth of SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Inderjeet. Go ahead.
Thanks, Israel. Good afternoon, everyone. Itai Manyere is my name. I'm from Zimbabwe, Harare, Zimbabwe. But today I represent an organization of young leaders and young entrepreneurs across over 100 countries, across all the regions. Most of the countries are actually represented here. What we do in this organization is to mold young leaders and young entrepreneurs, which we believe are the future of the world that will transform societies for our children to inhabit this earth. And I'm excited to sit on this panel this afternoon with people that I believe are way older than me, and I will
not too older than you.
I will get an opportunity to learn quite a lot from the experience that they have. My background is IT, but I'm very excited to be on this panel as we talk about issues around financial instruments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to be clear, we're not too much older than you. Just a few years. Please.
Okay. Yeah. Very good afternoon, and happy to be on this panel.
If you can put the microphone closer to you, please.
Yeah, let me move closer. Okay, all right. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. So let me just start with my background. I'm from Singapore. Started my career as an engineer, and I was working for an American company, Texas Instruments, for 13 years. I gave up my successful career to start my first company in 1998, which is the unicorn that Baibas was talking about. That was in the area of semiconductor technology. I exited that, and I started another company, and I exited that also, another semiconductor company. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I also invest in many companies. But I've done a lot more than that. While I was doing all of those things, working and also starting my companies, I also entered Parliament. I was a member of Parliament in Singapore for 20 years. And I was the chairman of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Finance and also the Ministries of Trade and Industry, which means I was involved in helping shape policies in the area of entrepreneurship, startups, small and medium enterprises, and also financing all of these organizations. I spent a good number of years in Parliament shaping the government policy so that we could have a more vibrant economic, future economy that's based on knowledge economy that's driven by entrepreneurship and enterprise. And beyond that, I also am I've invested in, I think, about 25 startups. Most of them failed, but there are also quite a number of successful ones. Some got listed in the stock exchange in Singapore and other parts of the world. And I continue to invest in companies. More recently, I spun off a cybersecurity company, which is the world-class technology from the university, Nanyang Technological University. And that is 2 years in the making. I think that will be a unicorn in a few years. I'm chairing the board of that company, but there are professors who are running it. I'm on the board of trustees of Nanyang Technological University. It is in terms of world ranking, we are number 12 in the world today. But I'm also the first graduate of that university. In 1985, I graduated with my engineering degree. And today I'm on the board of trustees, and we have brought that university to be among the top in the world. NTU also has an innovation company. Instead of focusing on entrepreneurship and innovation as a department, we decided to create a private company. And I'm a chairman of the board of that company that handles all the innovation, technology transfers, investments, entrepreneurship, education of NTU, all the research that's done in NTU. So I do quite a bit of that. So you can see, yesterday in our discussions, we talked about a triple helix model where everyone needs to be involved, government needs to be involved, enterprises and entrepreneurs and industry needs to be involved, and universities need to be involved. I can say that, I probably have got experience of being in every part of the triple helix. I've been in government. I've worked in multinational companies and industry. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm still an entrepreneur today. And, I continue to focus on, and I got involved in shaping many of these policies. About 10 years ago, we also became part of the World Entrepreneurship Forum. And I'm the co-president of that World Entrepreneurship Forum together with E.M. Leon. We were very active for many years. We're kind of restructuring right now. And so you may not have seen many activities. So I'm also president of that organization. And one of the things that I've been doing recently was, I talked about it, so some of you who listened to me the day before, was on building global networks. In fact, regional networks of ecosystems, and then later on building global networks of ecosystems so that we can have cross-border investment, cross-border market penetration. And so I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship, about investment, about especially developing ecosystem. And I hope that through the World Business Angel Forum, I can continue to play an active role and help other ecosystems succeed.
Thank you. Mr. Torrent.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Juan Torrents. I am the chairman of FEMOSA. FEMOSA is the World Free and Special Economic Zone Federation. We are based in Geneva, Switzerland. Was created 20 years ago. We have the status of observer for UNIDO and from ANTAC. And the main goals of FEMOSA is to help and support the special economic zones, especially in emerging countries. A special economic zone is a project, multi-projects. And for that reason, we have to help the promoters, but also the investors that they are interested to invest in the special economic zones. Because the investors, I was manager director of Barcelona Free Zone for 10 years, so when the investors arrived to a foreign country, they need to be supported and they need to have confidence. And this is one of the jobs that we do. We support them to give confidence, to give guarantees of their investment, and to the special economic zones managers, we offer them to issue the best practice management models. And well, after 10 years, for sure we make a lot of mistakes, but we learn a lot as well. And I am not going to discuss who is the oldest of the, of the panel. But we have in the pipeline now, we have two main projects. One of the projects is to create the World Free and Special Economic Zone Directory, where we are compiling data from 225 countries, and we will put all the free zones that we know. This would be for free for the zones, and we are doing this in connection with ANTEC. And the other project is the what we call the Project Factory. The Project Factory is we will help people who has an idea, but they don't have capacity to put the idea in paper. So through the University of Geneva, we are providing them a small feasibility study and a small business plan. And we can support ideas, and all these ideas are startups, so to grow and to implement projects, very, very good projects in the special economic zones.
Can I just add one more thing that I forgot to mention? Because this is quite a hot topic today about Africa, I want to mention that in 1997, I started this company together with my brothers. And today we do business in 38 countries in Africa. And we have 13 companies in different parts of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and 2 companies in Saudi Arabia. We focus on consumer electronic products. And if there's anyone who's interested, to do something with us to develop your parts of Africa, please let me know.
Great, great. Thank you. And yes, one of the objectives for the audience yourselves is that although you might be taking away some notes from what my distinguished guests will be giving you tips about and what they have done, it is very important that you find the time to approach them, have a conversation, have a coffee with them, because in conferences, the knowledge that you can gain from somebody on the panel is not just what they explain on the panel, but it's amazing 5-minute coffee break with any one of you will also open the doors for the audience to be able to speak to you. So feel free to approach them. They're available. They also could learn from you, but I think the whole point of these conferences is that we create those synergies. And just getting a little bit into the matter of this and the subject that we have with innovative financial instruments that support economic growth. Innovative financial instruments can attract funding from other public or private investors in areas where governments have a strong interest, but which are perceived as risky by investors. Examples include sectors with high economic growth or innovative business activities. The fact that some governments invest risk capital in a certain fund or cover part of the risk associated with a certain type of projects can reassure other investors and encourage them to invest alongside the government. Moreover, innovative financial instruments have important non-financial effects also, such as promotion of best practices. So getting into the matter, we'll now ask you different questions to each one of you, and we will start with Mr. Hayek. You have a keynote speech tomorrow, which is called This About Largely Untapped Sources of Financing. Could you give us a brief overview of it, and for the benefit of those who might not be able to attend tomorrow, but also based on that, what is the real content that somebody will take from your speech tomorrow?
My speech tomorrow will be basically about three general areas. One is structured finance, one is ESG investing, environmental, social, and governance-related investing, and about Islamic finance. I think these are areas that companies are not taking full advantage of. So I will be talking about that. But specifically, I will probably concentrate most on ESG, because I think it's a very interesting growing market where there are now more than $40 trillion available for companies that, most companies are not aware of that, so they're not really applying for that pool, and they should be. I think the discussion about structured finance, which I will not talk much about tomorrow, but is interesting for this panel, I thought, has a lot to do with creating new instruments. And I don't know, whatever the time that there is, I'd be...
Please share with us. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I'm more involved with larger companies. They're not at the angel stage, so it's SMEs, if you like, or growth companies, as well as large companies. And the thing is that there's a lot of money in emerging markets. It's just that it's not channeled properly. So, so everybody goes to London or goes to New York. I say this is like, you go to Saudi Arabia or Venezuela, where there are large oil reserves, and you dig almost anywhere and you get some oil. But there's a lot of oil that's shale oil that you need to frack. And money in emerging markets is like shale oil. So it is fractured. People are sending the money. Oftentimes they make money locally and then they send it abroad. But we need to develop mechanisms, and I'm specifically talking about emerging markets here for the SMEs. And we need to develop mechanisms for that money to stay in the country and be invested in the country. Unfortunately, I mean, the main thing, the actors that have the greatest say in this are the governments and the multilateral development organizations, but none of them is taking the steps to develop local capital markets the way they should be. What are the steps to develop the local capital markets is mainly to create liquidity and volume by first listing larger companies so that they allow the smaller companies to come in, but then also in finding ways to enhance the credit. I mean, Wall Street has made billions of dollars tranching credit into various segments in order to be able to sell a different type of risk to every different type of investor depending on their appetite. And we are not tranching the risk in emerging markets today. We are not enhancing. There's no credit enhancement. So if you're from Latin America, you'd remember the Brady bonds, where these were bonds issued with a zero coupon treasury bond attached to them. So the credit was enhanced. These are the kinds of things we should be doing in emerging markets. We should be looking at guarantees, government guarantees. In my country, the central bank had what's called they called it a Circular 330, which was a decision by the central bank to guarantee up to 75% of the equity invested in startups by the banks. So the banks could be encouraged to invest in startups. And the other element of financial engineering that is needed is insurance. And we are not creating the insurance markets that are needed in order to get those small companies to be to participate more in a fintech environment within their national zones. All of these things can be done, but I think maybe with WBAF and WAP, we can work together to get governments to be more aware of the need to do this.
Great, thank you. My next question, Mr. Hussein, will be how can we make more accessible access to finance for startups, just taken from Mr. Hayek, how he was closing his remarks. Enterprises and industry producing goods and services. How can we make more accessible these innovative financial instruments?
Well, in my experience over the last 30 years, working, after I finished my academic education, I started to work immediately to support micro and small businesses. By profession, I'm an investment expert. I used to identify investment profiles, and then we used to promote it for investors. Mainly, I was being the first industrial coordinator for the Arab Gulf countries, and mainly was to boost foreign direct investment from Arab Gulf countries to Africa, mainly East Africa, Zanzibar, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and so on. But then we started to work also in Lebanon, Jordan, Morocco, Egypt, and so on, and in the Gulf countries itself. Interesting enough, we have faced challenges, not because mainly when you say mobilization of foreign direct investment, that you want to have a foreign investor to come and invest in a country, mainly invest in cash investment or technology transfer and know-how or market outlet. We were very successful in bringing investors at that time. Entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, it is a new science. Well, it has been there, but we started to use it more and more in the last 20, 25 years. So we used to bring investors, but we were not finding local investors, which we call them today entrepreneurs. Why? Because the ecosystem was not enabling that. Because the ecosystem which we have in most, I would say, if I talk about the MENA region, the Arab countries, and even in Turkey, because we've been working a lot with GOSCEP into that, and in sub-Saharan Africa, it dates back to the educational system. The educational system came from the colonial era, which was not boosting innovation, actually, it was killing innovation, because those educational systems, they have been formed to help the administration of the colonies, well, there was engineer, there was medicine and so on, but not on creativity, not on innovation. You have to go to school, university, and they're looking for a job. The governments have been continuing this, just supplying people jobs, but no ecosystem to nurture and to develop startups, So being as an investment expert, this is the first challenges we started to face. So how we can bring entrepreneurial culture, especially if you talk about the Middle East, if you talk about Iraq, if you talk about Lebanon, if you talk about Syria, if you talk about Egypt, history-wise, the Phoenicians used to trade up to the Scandinavians. They used to make, they used to make boats and ships, and they used to sell it because of the Shajarat al-Arz, or the pine trees. The Egyptians, they were trading with up to India, Then you came and you have the Silk Road, where the Arabs have been navigating. They developed all of these businesses up to China. But then, when the colonial era came, and it started with the education, the population was growing, ecosystem was not there. You're asking about financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is one of the pillars, but it's not the problem of finance, it's the problem of access to finance. How do you prepare a startup or even an enterprise to be sustainable and to grow if you don't have the right entrepreneur behind it? According to Harvard Business School, which this is what we utilize, that it is preferable to have an entrepreneur quality A than a business plan quality A, because a traditional financial instrument, they need to have a business plan. They used to look on a document, But we have reversed that cycle. We started to look in what we call the Bahrain model, which I say we implemented in 52 countries. We started to identify an entrepreneur with a potential idea. Then he goes in a system called pre-incubation to ensure that he knows how to manage the company or the enterprise is growing. We have to ensure that there is a technology, because most of the countries, in developing countries, they're technology seekers, technology sourcing, they're not technology providers. Then I have to develop a fine-tuned business plan. So I come to the access to finance. Here, I have a skilled entrepreneur with a good business plan. But then this is not enough. I have to carry on, because 70% of small and medium enterprises, they die in their first 3 years if you don't provide the right mentoring and business counseling. Fine. That was the beginning. Then we started to look into innovative means of finance. Today we're talking about business angels, and this is growing more and more. We're having crowd funds. This is now, it is a new setup which is coming also. The difference between a business angel funding and crowdfunding, that the business angel also, you will be part of the enterprise, you will be providing counseling and mentoring. The crowdfund could be any group of people that will invest on an entrepreneur. There should be a link between micro, finance, and small and medium, and then from small and medium to large. We have to ensure that entrepreneurs, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, they migrate from the informal to the formal sector. And this will only happen through financial and non-financial, okay? So there are now new more, because entrepreneurs becoming more dynamic, things are changing, educational systems are changing. So now we have also to ensure that the access to finance have to grow with this. Well, of course, there is venture capital, but venture capital, it has a very limited size of investment. So this is why in this forum, especially if I have to promote Business Angel, I think is becoming one of the most dynamic financial systems, you know, for startup and growth of small and medium enterprises.
Great, thank you. In your experience, I mean, your organization, how many members have you got around the world, and in how many countries you operate? How do you exchange this information about innovative financial instruments in order to support these SMEs and startups?
Okay, we've got over 100,000 members across the world, close to 200,000 members in over 100 countries. And just from experience on how these entrepreneurs have been accessing finance in those various countries, pretty much traditional methods, pitching for seed funding, as it were. Seed funding that would probably come through, at times it would come even through angel investors who perhaps set up pitching contests, as it were, and get young people come up with their ideas, then they breathe life into it. But there comes a problem at times when only seed funding is put into the business, because it's only there to get started and not necessarily to get it to scale up, as it were, which is where I also see opportunities for this network to then come in and be able to identify enterprises that would be ready for scaling up and taking them onto the next level. And our members also have been able to just access through using traditional methods, you know, your debt financing, in some markets where you don't necessarily have financial institutions that have an appetite for startups, as it were. You now have microfinance banks that have started cropping up. But that funding is very expensive, and it does not necessarily promote confidence and the ability for these startups to be able to scale up, because the funding is very expensive. And opportunities such as this, where you've got angel investors available for that particular network, it would help a great deal in terms of helping them to be able to scale up their enterprises. And there lies an opportunity even for this network to get into that particular space.
So just coming onto it, having been a member of this organization and representing this organization here that is so big with so many members, have you ever thought of creating your own angel network and do the great challenge that we have, which is cross-border, because you already are in 100 countries?
That's true. Probably we might not necessarily call it an angel network, as it were, but because it's a numbers game, we could probably make it a crowdfunding network. So X individual or X group of people come up with an idea that resonates with the other person on the other side of the world. They can fund part of it to be able to get it going. So yes, there is that power of the numbers that we can be able to tap into because of that capacity in terms of human capital that we do have, and certainly pockets of access to different types of finance, as it were, and there lies an opportunity for us to be able to create that internally. So we then look to ourselves to be able to harness the capital, to even harness even knowledge from external players, because he also spoke about how at times we focus so much on the funding aspect, but there is a whole ecosystem which includes knowledge, provision of knowledge to these entrepreneurs to be able to sustainably run their businesses and make them able to be there post 10 years or 5 years. Yesterday we were talking about how we've got failure. Our failure rates in businesses is very high, and there lies a gap in also for us to be able to bridge that particular gap.
Great. Well, we'll be hearing news from you when 10% of all your members turn themselves into qualified angel investors by WBAF. I think that'll be amazing. All of a sudden, we'll have 10% of 200,000, 20,000 angel investors in the world.
Probably.
You know, you have a great impact.
Sure.
Mr. Singh, please share with us, you had a unicorn, when probably unicorns weren't a term that most of us were aspiring to have. First of all, please share with us what a unicorn is for those that are not involved in the industry. You know, sometimes we use these terms publicly and we forget that not all the audience might be familiar with it. Then share with us what innovative instruments were you able to utilize to finance yourselves, to grow, and then to have this type of exit where you become a unicorn. Because that route is the route that every startup wants to get to, is aspiring to, and also that's the term that every angel investor and VC and private equity that I know, or professional investor, would like to have in their portfolio. Please go ahead.
Okay, you're right. You know, when the company I started became a unicorn, the term was not invented yet. So I started this in 1998. It's a semiconductor company. It provides engineering and also manufacturing services at the back end of the manufacturing process. So there's a wafer fab and then there's a back end process. So that, of course, involves a lot of technology and also very high capital investment. And so at that time when I had this idea, I had written a business plan. I had kind of indicated the kind of the team members who were going to join me, because many of them were working with me in Texas Instruments. I was going to bring them along. So I had a good team too who had that experience. I could not find the money in Singapore. And so I wanted to raise at least $100 million US at the seed stage, because this was very technology intensive and very capital intensive.
So $100 million at seed stage?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that we understand that $100 million is probably C series on shareholding for other startups. That'll be the natural route to take.
Yes.
And you wanted to raise $100 million on seed stage because your startup had hardware intensive? It
was hardware intensive, capital intensive, you know. So I was going to set up a huge operation, which I finally managed to do. Now, so at that time, you know, it was a very ambitious goal. Singapore was not an environment where we could find funds very easily. So what helped me was my network. So this is very important that you build networks around the world. I was working in the semiconductor industry for many years, and I had built a very strong network of investors around the world. And the most aggressive investors at that time came from Taiwan. So I went over to Taiwan, made a presentation. I managed to raise all my money in just one go. But because I'm a Singaporean, I wanted it to be a Singaporean company, so I wanted to have at least 30% of ownership to be in Singapore, so that I can call it a Singapore company. And after I raised the money, I managed to come back and interest the Singapore investors now, because I already had 100 million and I raised another 38 million. Now, I did not realize that that was a huge goal, a record of sorts, until about 5 years ago I had a conversation with a professor from Cambridge who was trying to start up a OS company in China. I had dinner with him, and he was telling me, Inderjit, I'm getting $100 million at the seed stage, and it's a record in the world. So I I just did not take note of it. A few days later, I realized actually I did 138 million in 1998 at that time. And so So that was, I would say, whether it's a business, WBAF or any other networks that you have, the most important thing is for you to make yourself known and be noticed and show your capability so that when you are ready with an idea, you will be able to find the interested investors. Now, for me, it was not just a good business plan. I knew the industry. When I was in Texas Instruments, I did almost every aspect of what the semiconductor industry needs to do. I was fortunate to move around, but also was a good team. And I think that when investors invest in a very good team. And so then we had it was a kind of a fairy tale startup, I would say. In February 98, I left. In May 98, I created the team. And by November 98, I had acquired a 400,000 square foot building. And by July 98, in fact, by November 98, I had my first production. By first quarter 99, I was already profitable. And by 3 years, I had run about $100 million US, 38 customers, blue chip customers around the world. And so then, then we got listed a few years later. And in fact, I got approval to list in NASDAQ and Singapore Stock Exchange concurrently in 2001. We pulled back for a while because of the dot-com bubble burst, and then we continued. So this, it's a background of my journey.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Torrent. Now, economic zones. Everybody thinks, and probably wrongly, like myself, that economic zones are the synergy of tax freedom for big corporations to come and operate in other countries. And that for us, startups that work on innovation don't have a space there and shouldn't come anywhere near it because it's a tool that most governments use to bring world companies to operate in certain areas. We're having a early conversation with yourself yesterday. Yeah. You put me right on my wrong appreciation of these economic zones, special economic zones. Please explain to us a little bit more about how they operate and put us, for those of us who were thinking wrongly on the term, what actually they do, and then the synergy between these economic zones and what can they do for the startups? What can they do for the startup world?
Well, that's true. The first thing we have to explain what is a special economic zone, because there is a lack of knowledge on this. Even the promoters of the zone many times doesn't know how to optimize the benefits that the zone can offer to the investors. So the problem of all governments of the world is to create jobs. This is the main problem. To create jobs, you need investments. Investments need infrastructures. So the infrastructures are these special economic zones. And a special economic zones could be an area of, as Shanghai Free Trade Zone, of 124 square kilometers, or in a space of 60 square meters. The only thing that they need is to collect incentives to be there. Incentives to be there means that not only the tax incentives are the most important. The most important thing for a special economic zone is to choose a right location. Right location means communication by road, by airport, by port. You don't need to put an airport nearby but an airport, let's say 20 or 40 kilometers away, is enough. To have a port nearby, to have communications by road, to have communications by telephone, to keep the energy in a standard that we've been in some factories that the energy fell down 5 times per day. So you have to take care of this. Then on the other side, now sometimes it's a confusion when people talk about free zones, special economic zones, export processing zones, bonded warehouse. For us, the definition is an area where you get incentives. Tax incentives, logistic incentive, you get an economy of scale that sometimes is the most important, and you as I said before, you find comfort and security for your investment. Which are the synergies that we have? I will explain you a short story. In May last year, FEMOSA was invited to participate in a meeting in Georgia. We made our presentation, and after my presentation, Chairman Bairbas made the presentation of the World Investment Forum. So after his presentation, we see each other that we have a lot of synergies because we are a complement. So FEMOSA can help startups to choose the right place, to help them to implement their business. And a special economic zone is a long-term project. So you have to take care about your investments. Sometimes your investments are small, but sometimes in one special economic zone need an investment of $100 million. So we can support this. We can approach the startups, and we can approach the promoter of the zones, and link and be the facilitator that the startups can invest in the zones. So this is the most important thing. In the previous panel, it was a group talking about the Mediterranean. In FEMOSA, we divided the world in economic areas. So Mediterranean has 23 countries and more than 500 million people. So every day, more people is involved in the economy, in the market economy. But now we are preparing a project to analyze the logistics in the Mediterranean and to improve the logistics in the Mediterranean in order to facilitate the inter-regional trade, to facilitate with properly lines, shipping lines, airports, infrastructures with a special economic zone or just a bonded warehouse, to keep the products in a good shape and keep the products controlled. This gives a good opportunity because keep the products competitive. And if your product is competitive, you can get more export markets. Today, the logistics in one product, so this telephone, probably 60% of the cost are logistics, starting from the raw material. So you have to keep about the logistics, and the logistics needs to be using a special economic zone or a simple bonded warehouse. If we are in the Mediterranean, so the Mediterranean has a very good legislations to support the investors. 2 weeks ago, I was in Tunisia, and we had a very important event to put Tunisia as the door of the African countries. This is the startup of a project, and this startup is open to everybody, and everybody in the map can reach other export countries and increase the economy. One of the countries that was there, they talk about regional agreements. Regional agreements is important because they can create cross-border free zones or cross-border special economic zones. When in a cross-border, they can join efforts from both countries, and they can give a value add to the products that they have. And if you export wood why not export wood in a bit, with a value add, cut and prepare for furniture. If you have fruits, you can export juice, you can put canned foods, and this is something that if you don't this, somebody will do for you. And you are the producer. And this is the way that we can give support. We are in the market of the freezer. I've been in the market of the freezer for more than 30 years. So we know a lot about this, and for us, we are happy and proud to explain our experiences to young blood. So this is how we can support the startups.
Great, thank you, Mr. Torrens. And I'd like to follow that up, and I'm going to move from that way, this way now, with the next question. Before, if we have any questions from the audience, please put your hand up and there'll be a microphone nearby. If we don't, then we will start the closing remarks. And some of you might know, some of you don't. I'm an instructor on the WBAF Mentor program, which we did the past 3 days. And we started in January with some webinars. Participants from more than 12 countries. So we're now talking a lot about cross-border exchange of best practices. We are talking about cross-border investment as well. We are talking about cross-border best practices on mentorship. So given the knowledge that each one of you has and your organizations, and that you have access to financial instruments that can impact on startups at different stages, whether they're on a seed round raising $100 million, or whether they're on scaling up to operate in another 2 or 3 countries. What is important is, for me, and this is a challenge to you, for the audience that have been here listening to us, is what can you offer to the audience today or in the next 24 hours, if you're here with us tomorrow, that it will make them have a positive impact on the startup ecosystem in their country and what they do. So, Mr. Torrens, we start with you, whilst the rest have a few minutes to think about what value as mentors and you can intangible place. So if you can bring money to the table, the special mechanisms, remember the title of this panel was Disruptive or Innovative Financial Instruments. So let's be punctual, let's deliver the goods for the audience, and let's not just leave it on free advice whilst you were members of this panel. As much as I appreciate your time as being here, and I'm sure Chairman Bibers as well, I don't want you to leave this conference without having offered something of real, tangible value to the audience, please.
Just 2 minutes. So what we can offer network. We can offer a very important network, and we can offer connections with investment, even not a startup, but investment forums, and we can support the initiative to invest in one country. So FEMOSA has a database of about 15,000 addresses, and we are connected with 1,800 special economic zones in 135 countries. But we are also connected with the investment promotion agencies. Now, so all the business card that I got would be in the country that you are living as a useful address. So this is the way that we can support. In events like this, you can explain, you can teach, because we have to bridge the gap of knowledge, because many opportunities in special economic zones no. So it's not an industrial, it's not it's a trade. No, sometimes you can create a special economic zone for tourism, for medical, healthcare village. So where you can implement services in one area where you got people from many countries to go there, and sometimes they have the tax holidays, so you can get these services, first-class services, at a very cheap price.
Great. I'll stop you there because we've got to move on quickly because I've been told we're running out of time and they get angry if we don't stick to it. How much money are you going to offer? Sorry.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we realized in Singapore before we started on this journey of building an entrepreneurial economy, we were very dependent on foreign direct investment, but we realized the future has to be an entrepreneurial economy. And what was lacking for us was the ecosystem, the entrepreneurs, the education, the market access, the money, you know. And so this was something that was not well developed in Singapore. We tried to duplicate Silicon Valley, it did not work, so we developed our own model. And so what I would like to say is that we actually have developed an ecosystem that we experimented a few times and we adapted to our local environment. So in this ecosystem, we have investors, we have companies, we have technology that we can share around. What I would like to offer is for us to work with ecosystems around the world. First of all, to share the best practices to see how we can share some of our experiences for you to solidify your ecosystem, but more importantly, for the ecosystem to ecosystem network to be developed. So that if, let's say, I have anyone in my ecosystem, a company that requires cross-border financing, you know, and there is something available in your ecosystem, we can actually immediately have an access because we know the ecosystem are connected. Or vice versa, if let's say you have, require for financing and you require cross-border financing, we may have in our ecosystem someone who's interested and we could develop that. So I think what is important for all of us down here who are running ecosystem to see how we can build these networks, share our best practices, and also build that linkages so that we can have that smooth movement between borders.
Great. And you help us to do the next unicorn in our ecosystems.
As I say, I've got a cybersecurity company that's a unicorn in the making, coming soon.
Great.
Thank you very much, Israel, and thank you very much to everyone here today. I don't have much to say because I don't want to be the one who stands in between you and your coffee break. But what I want to do is I want to give you an opportunity to connect with us, a network of over 150,000 young people across the world. If you want to tap into that network, let's get talking. And I throw it back to you. What is it that you'd like to access from that human capacity that we have in our network? And I'm not a politician, but I'll do my best to make sure that I deliver on that which you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hussein.
Well, there is a lot. I have a lot to do. Well, me being a board member of the World Business Angel Forum, of course, this is one of our duty and due diligence to work. But just because of the participants, mainly from Africa, I want to announce something very important. On 22nd of March, in Addis Ababa, we're going to have a meeting for the Ministers of Finance and Economic Planning and Development for all Africa, North and Sub-Saharan Africa. And we are launching, for the first time, a coalition called Coalition for SMEs for Africa. Mm-hmm. It's mainly how to enhance the ecosystem, which it means also we're working with the African Development Bank, with the Arab Bank for Development of Africa, where they have brought this initiative, and the World Bank, and a lot of banks like the Wafa Tijari Bank, like the First Nigerian Bank, all what we wanted to do and to show that there is innovation in Africa, there is a lot of startups in Africa, there are a lot of women initiatives because one of our focus will be financial inclusion for women, and there is going to be a 3-year program, so we'll be working with you definitely, a 3-year program how to help startups, and I would like to ensure that we will bring them, and I hope by next year or the year after, to the World Business Angel Forum. Just for good information for the free zones, we're working with the International Organization of Free Zones, which is based in Dubai, and we have a program called Future Free Zones. The Future Free Zones is based on innovation and entrepreneurship. We're changing the whole cycle of free zones. Free zones in the past, they used to mobilize foreign direct investment. But what is the value added for a country or for the community or for the region? We want to start with innovation and entrepreneurship to bring foreign investors. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hayek.
I'll start with where you finished. Most free zones today can be done on a PPP basis, but and we'd be happy to help with that. As PPP association, we're not really set up, like I said, for startups, but the only thing I can do is really offer advice for companies that are a bit larger, that are more SMEs and beyond, to look at structured finance, to not underestimate it, to not think that the only way you can get money is from just an angel investor or the bank, to look at ESG, because this is the way of the future, and to not forget Islamic finance. All of these three elements have a lot of money available that you need to tap into.
Thank you. And tomorrow your presentation is at what time?
Is that, I don't know, I don't remember too.
Okay,
it's
we'll make sure it's in the
Yes.
program. Look for his presentation, and we are now. Oh, we have one question. We run out of time. Sorry, I can't take any questions. You're welcome to speak to them as soon as they come off this stage, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to our panel and to our moderator, Israel Pons from Mexico City. Muchas gracias.